Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Live Weather Impact. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees here on WCNC Plus. It has been quite a week. We've had a lot of stuff going on across the Charlotte area, but here's the good news. The weekend is almost here, and we have a pretty good weekend set up for you. So let's talk about tomorrow morning, because some areas across the Charlotte metro are going to be experiencing some patchy frost. Now, here's a good rule of thumb. If you had frost this morning or you were under a frost advisory, you should expect that you are again tonight. I don't anticipate it'll be quite as cool, but if you saw frost last night, it's a good chance that you'll see it just based on the current pattern and lighter winds. Now, mild afternoons, cool nights heading into most days of the weekend. And then we'll be looking forward to early next week for some big changes on the way. First things first, frost advisory in effect for Caldwell County, Burke County, Alexander, Iredell, Rowan, Stanley, Catawba, and Lincoln counties. Now, of course, a lot of this expands over toward the Greensboro area and Raleigh-Durham. And essentially, this means that temperatures are going to be chilly enough that there's a small chance that we'll see some patchy frost. Now, there is a reason why the mountains are not under a frost advisory, but we are going to talk more about that coming up with Tim Buckley when we join him at 6:40. So here are the overnight low temperatures. Low to mid 40s across most of the Piedmont, so that's pretty much I-40 and south. Upper 30s for the foothills and around the freezing mark for the mountains. So good idea if you're in those mountain communities also to cover up any sensitive vegetation or bring it inside if you can. Big reason why I don't anticipate it will be as cold tonight is because of a little bit of cloud cover. You can very obviously see there streaming in from the west. We eventually are going to see more clouds building in by Sunday, so a pretty cloudy Panthers game on Sunday, but really no other weather-related issues expected. An approaching storm system will eventually bring us a small chance of rain by late Sunday, but this will be primarily impacting us on Monday and then through Tuesday morning. So I am leaving in that small little spritz there because what happens if I put 0% and then you guys get a shower at 7 o'clock? You're going to be upset with me for not giving you a heads up. So that's why I'm leaving that in there. As we go through Futurecast through Saturday afternoon, lots of sunshine. Here's that very obvious change, though, heading into Sunday. I do think we'll see some patchy fog likely in the morning, just with so much widespread cloud cover. And then there's that tiny little spritz there Sunday night before more showers moving in by Monday. Now, will it rain all day Monday? No, but will it almost feel like it rained all day Monday? Likely yes. Think about your classic rainy, chilly, cold, drizzly day, and that's what Monday's going to see. However, it is not going to be a widespread risk day, right? So we're kind of toying around with the idea of, instead of going 0 to 100 when it comes to our weather alert days, kind of putting that place in the middle, right? Where it's nuisance weather, it's impactful weather, but it's not necessarily dangerous. I think that's going to be Monday. It will be a nuisance because nobody likes to drive morning or afternoon commute when there's rain, and it will be annoying because who wants to, have to cover up for a drizzle, right, when you're just getting out of your car trying to go to the grocery store. But we need the rain. So again, there's positives and I guess negatives to pretty much everything when it comes to the weather. But with Monday, I'm cautiously optimistic that we will experience accumulation for everyone. Right now, I'm anticipating the Piedmont to get about a half of an inch to probably an inch at a maximum. Mountain communities around 1 to 2. Good news is with rainfall totals of that magnitude, we will not be under a significant risk for flooding, which is always good news. So the wind mainly Monday through Tuesday morning. Again, half of an inch to 2.5 inches. I think 2.5 is really stretching it, but there are some areas in the mountains that certainly could get that closer to the Tennessee border. Rain jackets, rain gear, and just be prepared for the fact that it is not just going to be rainy, but also chilly and gross as well. A tropical storm, Melissa. This is the update, of course, on the tropics. Still a tropical storm, but very close to hurricane strength as of the latest advisory. We've talked about it for days now. I know I wasn't with you guys, but I know that Tim and Brad have been talking about it for days now. Melissa is going to be a big impact for the island of Jamaica. It has already caused some pretty significant surf and flooding conditions for the coast there, the southern coast of Haiti, as well as the Dominican Republic. Right now, the National Hurricane Center's track does have it getting close to, if not making landfall in Jamaica on Monday as a Category 4 hurricane, which would be devastating for those areas, not just because of the rain, but because of the wind and the storm surge, and then eventually moving over eastern Cuba, and then eventually toward the Turks and Caicos Islands and the Bahamas by Wednesday as a Category 2 hurricane. Now, I think that when we look at these rainfall totals, I do want you to keep in mind that this is a forecast model, but many forecast models underdid the rainfall that we got from Hurricane Helene, so just please keep that in mind. Right now, the latest model data is showing 20 to 25 inches of rain for Kingston, Jamaica, and about 15 to 20 on the eastern side of the island of Cuba. Now, here's the thing. When we think about these rainfall totals, I want folks here in the Carolinas to think about Hurricane Helene. We had a predecessor rain event that brought us rain for days beforehand and even severe weather. And then the highest rainfall total in Busick, North Carolina was 30 inches from essentially the time that the predecessor rain event happened to the time it was over after Hurricane Helene. So if these areas have already seen rain so far this week, so they're kind of having, I guess, a predecessor rain event, you could say, of their own, on top of that 15 to 20 inches of rain. So again, devastating, catastrophic, certainly going to be some words that we'll be using with that. So please keep those folks in your thoughts and prayers. And if you have friends or family who live in those areas, again, eastern Cuba, coastal Haiti, the Dominican Republic, but especially Jamaica and eastern Cuba, please make sure that they're preparing accordingly and heeding those evacuation orders, things of that nature, if any of those are issued by their governments. Here's the Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. I'll leave you with this before we take off for a 2-minute break. You can see partly cloudy tomorrow, gorgeous weather. The checkers will be home again. I believe puck drops at 6 o'clock, but I'll double check that before our next weather. Don't quote me on it. Panthers game looks pretty good. We'll see more cloud cover increasing. Again, we are going to keep you weather alert, weather aware, I guess, for that weather impact day on Monday. Again, this is the idea of that playing around with that place in between. It's not necessarily an alert day because it's not severe, no flooding risk, but definitely going to be annoying when you see that rain. And then rain chances will taper off by the end of the week. I will also point out to you that Halloween is going to be pretty chilly. You can't see it there because of the lower third, but our normal highs and lows, there you go, thanks, Jeb. Our average high is 71 for this time of year. Average low is 47. So we're looking at 5 to 10 degrees below that. So when you think about prepping the kids for their Halloween costumes, you may want to anticipate having a jacket with that. So sorry, parents. I know you're probably going to have to be wrangling some of those kids. We're going to take a short 2-minute break and we'll be right back. We're back.
Hello.
Hello.
Here we are.
Here we are.
You're
Hi,
back,
Tim Buckley.
Actually. Hi. You've got something to tell us because you've been on a nice little fall journey, it seems like. And I want to know how it was up in the North Carolina mountains, right? Where were you? Blowing Rock?
Oh my gosh, it was fantastic. Yes, Tim, we were in Blowing Rock. We got to go leaf peeping in Blowing Rock and around Banner Elk. And then we got to go to Grandfather Mountain yesterday, which I will tell you, Tim, I know you've been there many a times, but the swinging bridge, you know how crazy it gets when it's breezy. It was closed when we got there, and then it reopened by the time we were leaving. And so we did get to go on it, but I felt like I was holding on for dear life. But honestly, the highlight, truthfully, was the Blowing Rock, which we were at this morning. Jeb has actually some pictures that I took that were going to pop up. I mean,
okay.
On an iPhone
That's pretty
13,
nice.
nonetheless.
The 13.
I know.
iPhones take great pictures. I always think that, you can bring the fancy camera along, but if you're doing just a wide shot, the phones do great nowadays.
They do. I mean, that's not to say that we are saying anything against, people who... That's another shot. That was from the Blowing Rock. It was just off toward the east.
So that's really interesting to me. So what we're seeing, obviously, most of the mountains are kind of going a little past peak. But if you're at a little bit of a lower elevation, a lot of those trees are still green. So it sometimes just depends on the slope, which direction it's facing, and you can get a lot of variation. So still worth going up there.
Yeah, I would say that, okay, so on Grandfather Mountain, definitely was past peak, you could tell. And some of the leaves were coming off the trees already. But, some of the... it's the spruce trees, right? The green ones, Tim? That's in this picture. I don't want to say it incorrectly.
Yeah, you got your evergreens.
Yeah, the evergreens. So there's still a ton of those, of course, because they don't change colors like the others do. But a lot of the other leaves, kind of have lost their, their peak luster, which is something, of course, we talked to Howie Neufeld, the professor at App State, about a few weeks ago. But yes, Blowing Rock is about 3,600 feet. Anything below that, the color is so phenomenal. In fact, my friend's house where we stayed is in Blowing Rock, and I mean the colors were gorgeous. So that you're good to go no matter what. And speaking of Blowing Rock, Jeb, we want to bring Tim back up for this. Tim, are you ready for story time?
I'm ready. I'm ready to learn about Blowing Rock a little bit.
Guys. Okay, so sorry, we're going a little off, but I texted Tim about this earlier, and he said he was interested. So I asked Tim if he knew the legend of Blowing Rock, to which he responded, no. And I thought it was really interesting. So I'm going to tell you guys the legend of Blowing Rock, okay? And again, this is a legend. This is from their official website. I'm going to read part of it because I don't want to mess something up. Okay, so legend of Blowing Rock. If you've ever been there, you've seen the big rock formation. There looks like there's two people. One is kind of floating and one is on the rock itself. Okay, the legend says that a Chickasaw chieftain, fearful of a white man's admiration for his daughter, journeyed far from the plains to bring her to the Blowing Rock in the care of her mother. Okay, so this gave me a little bit of Rapunzel vibes, so keep this in mind. One day the maiden, daydreaming, she spied a Cherokee brave, so a Cherokee warrior, wandering in the wilderness far below. Again, this is a legend. And she playfully shot an arrow in his direction. They flirted a little bit. Looks like they fell in love. He courted her. And they, wandered the paths together. But one day, a strange reddening of the sky brought the man to be concerned of a sign of trouble. It was commanding his return to his tribe, but he did not want to choose between his tribe, basically, and his maiden's love. So, torn by conflict of duty and heart, he leapt from the rock into the wilderness. But the maiden was so grief-stricken that she prayed to the Great Spirit until one evening, a reddening sky appeared and a gust of wind blew the love of her life back to her. And that's where the legend of Blowing Rock comes from.
Wow, I didn't know all of that. That's quite something.
Yes, and if you want to read the whole thing, of course, I paraphrased a little bit. It is on the Blowing Rock's website. What I thought was funny is that, or I guess what was interesting, is that if you look at the picture, it kind of looks like, at first from far away, like someone was being pushed. But now that I know that he was coming back, that's a much better story.
That is a much better story. I was a little worried there for a bit.
Yeah, no,
It's interesting, but from a weather perspective, when we talk about a reddening this is how much of a geek I am. When we think
Yeah.
about a reddening sky, it's like, oh, we might have a storm on the way, right? We got some approaching cirrus clouds, and that can be a weather folklore as well.
Yeah, the red sky in the morning, sailors take warning, and so I thought the same thing. What I also think is interesting, and you might know this, Tim, but I think I've heard this before, from people who are from the mountains. But Blowing Rock is known to have that phenomena where the winds almost look like they're blowing vertically up instead of horizontally. Of course, today it was blowing from all directions, but I think a lot of that legend, kind of comes from that. And so if you were reading some of like the visitor plaques while you're there, they talk about people like tossing their hats and trying to see if their hats will come back. And I asked, I was telling Larry that I went there, and he said that he threw a hat off one time and it didn't come back. So he's tested out that theory, and I guess it doesn't work all the time.
Yeah, maybe make sure it's not a special hat.
Yeah.
Or you're not too attached to it anyway.
Yeah.
It looks cold up there. I've got the live Blowing Rock camera up right now on my weather graphics. It's 46 degrees. But boy, are they decked out for fall. You've got all the pumpkins you could want, tons of mums, and it's kind of looking like winter a little bit right now, isn't it, Brittany?
Yeah, it felt like winter. It was 29 there this morning, and the wind chill was even colder. But what is cool is that they have everything all fall decorated. But if you look really closely to where the gazebo is at Memorial Park, it's got, the spider webs and like all the Halloween decoration. They've got like the spooky, guys out right by Memorial Park. So there's enough Halloween, right, that in a week, from now, once it's not Halloween anymore, they'll be able to take that down, and it looks perfectly like fall. But we had so much fun just walking around downtown. This is not a free ad for Blowing Rock, everybody, but I just thought it was so much fun. It's just such an amazing, quaint little small town, and everybody's so kind. So if you have an opportunity to ever go visit, I think that's a really fun Main Street spot for you to check out. So.
Yeah, they don't need the free ad. You already
they don't
have a hard time getting a parking spot downtown. I think they'll be just fine. But you brought up here that it was 29 degrees up there, and I think one of the next things that we want to talk about is obviously we're talking about frost advisory here locally, but in the mountains they don't have any of these advisories anymore. And part of what was going on is like you said, they got below freezing, and when we talk about temperatures playing a role in agriculture and growing things, we've actually seen the first end to a growing season in parts of North Carolina, and that's up in the mountains.
Yeah, it is. And Jeb, if you can pop up Weather 1 on WCNC Weather Impact, you'll be able to see. So this is a very approximate growing season graphic. So about April 21st to October 11th is normally where we see that for the mountains, and then April 11th to November 1st for a lot of the northern Piedmont, and about November 11th for Charlotte and South. This is an approximation. Essentially what the National Weather Service does is they have approximate times of the growing season. And so during those time periods, essentially outside of during those time periods, so April 1st to November 11th, let's say for Charlotte, they will issue frost advisories and freeze warnings so that people who, like Tim said, work in agriculture or who are just gardening fanatics know when to cover up. But once the growing season ends, which it effectively did today for the mountains, Tim actually found the official public information statement confirming that, so the mountains are officially out of their growing season, they will no longer issue frost advisories, freeze warnings, freeze watches, because Tim, as we know, if you did that every single day of the year, including December, January, February, March, it would be every single night.
Yeah, and the whole idea behind that is the main impact of a freeze is that it's going to kill freezing temperature sensitive crops. And so in theory, that should already have happened. That should have happened last night up there in the North Carolina mountains. So, for example, you see our frost advisories for most of the Piedmont tonight. Charlotte not included, I guess, but all of us have some patchy frost potential. But why is it not going to get cold in the North Carolina mountains or the Tennessee mountains? No, of course it's going to get cold up there, but that's where they were below freezing already, and so they won't have any more frost advisories or freeze warnings for the rest of the season. However, once we finally start to get around here, a forecast below 32 degrees, or if it happens when we're not expecting it, I guess, then our growing season will be over too. But until then, you can expect to see some frost advisories or freeze warnings accordingly. And we got one again for tonight.
Speaking of, how cool did you guys get up there in Greensboro last night, Tim?
Well, it's kind of one of these things where it's so localized. So oddly enough, our airport sensor only got down to 41 degrees, but next county over, we had a 32 up in Reedsville. We've got a 36 in Lexington, where they're gearing up for the big barbecue festival this weekend. 37 in Asheboro. So you can see a wide variety. But like you were saying, 29 in Boone, 34 in Wilkesboro. Really depends on where you were.
Yeah, very similar for us too. Lincolnton got to 34, but then we only got to 42 in Charlotte. So very, very similar overall.
Yeah.
But I think that you'll start to see that this time of year, right? Like Monroe 47, Wadesboro 37. Some of those more rural communities, they'll have a better chance to get to those lower numbers, especially as we get deeper into the fall season. Tim, speaking of, even though it is fall, and we've talked a lot about cold temperatures, it is still tropics, still hurricane season.
It really is. And I think just the last couple of weeks we were saying, gosh, maybe we're done. Maybe we're done a little early here. But unfortunately, we could be looking at one of the more intense storms of the whole season so far. And I think we're just starting to see, this is Melissa, going from a storm that couldn't get its act together to one that might be able to really go through rapid intensification between now and the weekend. Right now, the latest stats on this thing are at 65 mile per hour for the winds. It's still just about 200 miles away from Jamaica. But the scary thing is, and I know that we've been talking about this for a couple of days, think about it, by next Tuesday, it could still basically be like right over here. So it's not going to move much over the next couple of days. And so I was saying yesterday, if you have friends or family that are on a trip in Jamaica, they need to do everything they can to get out of there, because this thing is going to become potentially a Category 4 hurricane. And if you were reading the National Hurricane Center discussion earlier today, they're basically forecasting it to be borderline Cat 5 by Monday. Cat 5 begins at 156 mile per hour wind. So this is really serious. And not only will we be talking about wind damage, obviously, but rain potential with this, Brittany, could be really bad too.
Yeah, we were looking at some of the graphics earlier, and of course, they've gotten a lot of rain so far the last few days. And on top of that, 15 to 20 inches. I mean, if anybody understands a predecessor rain event and then 15 to 20 inches of rain, it's the mountains of western North Carolina, or places like in North Carolina. And so big mudslide, big landslide impacts. And I like that you popped this up, Tim, because even if the storm itself doesn't make a direct landfall in Jamaica, even though right now we know the center of the NHC's track does, even if it's right on the east side, right on the west side, it really doesn't ultimately matter, because the storm itself, compared to the size of the island, is so large that regardless of where the eye wall goes over, the impacts really won't change that much.
It'll be really big, and if we want to be nitpicky about it, if you zoom in, you really don't want to be on the right-hand side of the storm. So if it does take a path that's on this side of the cone, most of Jamaica is going to be getting that worse right-hand side. So there are a lot of bad impacts from that storm. Farther down the line, other places that need to watch would be Cuba, the Bahamas, I guess the Turks and Caicos too. They need to watch this. If you're worried about us here in the States, I wouldn't really worry that much in our area. We're going to be okay. Most of the models bring this pretty far out to sea at our latitude. But beyond that, maybe, maritime Canada or New England, they probably still want to pay attention a little bit. But we should be okay here in the Carolinas.
Yeah, there's so many cold fronts that look to be sweeping that jet stream is just going to send anything out to sea.
Yes.
But as we know, storms offshore can still cause coastal impacts for the Carolinas. So if anybody has to watch, it's going to be those areas. And like you mentioned, New England, coastal spots, maritime Canada. Before we go, Tim, we can't run out of time without letting you have a chance to talk about the big game that's happening this weekend.
Oh, are we doing that?
Yeah, we have to. Oh my gosh, we have to.
I forgot all about it.
Yeah, Tim, you did not forget. We were talking about it earlier.
Well,
the Bills,
yes,
Tim Buckley's
Bills.
Buffalo Bills, and two of my best friends are also Bills fans, are coming to Bank of America Stadium.
Oof. First time in years. Hasn't happened in a while.
Are you coming?
Last time it did, I don't think Josh Allen was a thing. I'm looking at tickets. I'm holding out for them to get a little cheaper, but I think I might be going. Yes.
Okay. Are you going to come see me before you go to the game?
We might need to. We might.
Dude, I need
if
to
there's
hang
a tailgate
out.
involved.
Well, I
Yeah,
don't work
that
on
could be
Sundays.
good.
Brad does, so.
So, Bryce Parker might not play. Or Bryce Young.
Bryce
Is it
Young.
Bryce Parker? That's our sports guy. Our sports guy is Bryce Parker. Right? Channel
People
2.
are
Bryce
like,
Young,
who?
the quarterback.
Yeah, it looks like he's not going to, right? That was the latest story.
Yeah, he's
Georgia?
doubtful right now.
Yeah,
Looks like it'll be
doubtful.
Andy Dalton time.
Doubtful.
Yeah.
Well, all I'll say is the Bills are on a 2-game losing streak. So
In one of
earlier I
those
thought it would be a
games-
laugher.
They lost to the Falcons. So.
I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll still be a game in the second half, but I'll take the Bills to cover by like 10 points.
All right, the resident Panthers fan is in here, so Nick Sturdivant, come over here before we end Live Weather Impact and give your predictions.
Make a prediction.
For the Bills Panthers, and then Tim, I want to hear yours too.
I heard something about the Falcons beating the Panthers. That's not true.
Well, the Falcons did beat the Bills, though.
If they didn't beat the Panthers,
did.
it's going to be a close game. I have the Panthers 20-17.
All right, Tim Buckley,
Ooh,
what's your prediction?
That is close. I'll say Bills 24, Panthers 13.
Okay, Bills 24, Panthers 13. All right, their predictions are in. We'll see you guys on Monday. Tim, have a great weekend. If you do come, text me.
All right.